What is going on, everybody? My name is Dylan Spalding with Auto Racing Digest here on Athlon Sports. So happy to have you here on this fine Friday. It's an exciting racing weekend, right, Kevin? We got the Indy 500 this weekend, F1 in Monaco. I mean, this is kind of these next few weeks are kind of a racing lover's dream, if you will. But we got Kevin Conway joining me here this afternoon. He's the team principal for Smooge Racing, who competes in the Michelin Pilot Challenge. They also compete in SRO in GT4 racing as well. So your team's very busy during this the 2024 season. You've also raced in multiple disciplines. You've raced in the NASCAR Cup Series. You've raced in Xfinity Series, Truck Series, ARCA, sports car racing. You've done a little bit of everything, Kevin. So excited to have you on, man, and great to get to talk to you.
Thank you. Yeah, glad to be on. And yeah, it's been a fun journey so far in my career. It's been a little bit crazy, but a lot of fun nonetheless.
I guess I gotta begin. 2024. It's been a pretty exciting year for you guys. Michelin Pilot Challenge. You guys have competed in all the races up to this point. You guys have an upcoming race at Mid Ohio, a 4-hour race upcoming, which is going to be kind of interesting for that series, given the fact that you don't see a lot of 4-hour races, and then obviously all your GT work in SRO and with those series as well. I mean, you guys are pretty busy. It must be interesting when it comes from a team principal's perspective to be able to, juggle everything going on inside Smooth Racing's camp here so far in 2024.
It is, this year started out great. We had the opportunity to not only run, our normal drivers and John Jesbray and myself and a few of the other guys at Daytona, but we were able to have kind of our guest car, so to speak, at Daytona with Bubba Wallace and John Hunter Nemechek and Corey Heim, which was really cool to introduce those guys to the world of IMSA and to the world of GT racing as a whole. It was their first foray into that and first time making laps at Daytona on the road course and something, other than an Xfinity car or a Cup car. So that was a lot of fun, and it was a big program to pull off. And I think they were able to learn a lot from that, which was a cool experience for all of everybody within our organization. And then for us to go win the first race of the season in SRO GT4 America at Sonoma was a great way to kick off our 68 car program with John Jesbray and Tyler Gonzalez and Gear Wrench. So we were excited to get that win under the way. And then, we've hit some bumps in the road. The last couple of races haven't quite gone the way that we had planned or hoped, or what we expect of ourselves as an organization. But it's been a lot of fun working through those challenges. We have some new drivers this year, some new challenges along the way. There's new cars in the series that always make it interesting from a balance of performance standpoint, especially between the two series. So, Toyota Racing and everybody there has done a great job in helping us kind of fight for that BOP and make sure that we can ensure as much of a level playing field as possible. But I don't think you're ever happy with the decisions that are made from the sanctioning body standpoint. I think if they feel like everybody's equally as miserable, then they're doing their job to some extent. But it's been a fun year to start, and yeah, a lot of plate spinning.
Talking a little bit about GT4 America, you kind of mentioned, how do you kind of battle through some of those, hiccups that may come through along the way? I mean, you look ahead, obviously, to VIR. That's your next chance to kind of be able to maybe get back on the right track and get things going again. So, as a team, how do you kind of battle through maybe those struggles that you have during the season, which is a very common thing for any team that they go through a season. Every season can't be perfect for some teams. So
Absolutely. And I think that's really what separates the great teams from the good teams, is really when you have those challenging moments, diving in to understand what happened, what caused those moments, and not just acknowledge them, but to really learn from them and actually put what we call kind of an actionable action plan or correction plan in place, so that when these problems arise, we had an issue with some wheel studs at COTA, which takes us all the way back, doing a deep dive back to our supplier, understanding what run of wheel studs, where this came from, if was there any difference in materials from their suppliers, how were they installed in the hub, looking at every single process and everything you can all the way down through that chain of that supply chain, to from our suppliers, to how we installed them, to how we tightened them, how we loosened them, the mileage. Fortunately for us, we keep everything very, very fresh. So all of our cars, I feel like we change parts as much or more than almost anybody in the paddock. But, when you have those challenges, it's really understanding what happened, what the cause was. And in racing, sometimes you never get a definitive cause. You just have to kind of make an educated assumption. And understand and look at ways and processes and things that can be implemented to prevent that from happening again, so that you can continue to move forward. So, we've had some different issues both at Sebring and at COTA that were somewhat unrelated, but it's really finding the correlation to things that are seemingly unrelated and seeing if there is correlation, and just really understanding what happened so that you can prevent them and learn from them going forward, and find things. Often, you have to really kind of check your ego at the door, because it's every single person has a hand in it, and understanding the cause of those problems, or if the drivers didn't get it done, or made a mistake or whatever. It's like, okay, cool. What do we need to do to fix that? What do we need to do to make sure that mistake doesn't happen again, from the top down, starting with myself to our drivers, our mechanics, every single person that is involved.
And it was kind of an interesting weekend too, right? You guys were preparing for the first ever 3-hour race that GT4 America was offering, and that was kind of interesting. But also too, it could be kind of beneficial for you guys, especially with I know you guys have two different programs with your SRO program and your IMSA program, but you guys are also going to be preparing for a big 4-hour race that's upcoming with the Michelin Pilot Challenge, which there's not many of those type of races that are in that series as well. So how is that kind of helpful, preparing for this past race, for your 3-hour race, and then obviously now you go into a big 4-hour race at Mid-Ohio. So like, how does that preparation help on both sides for each program?
When you go in, endurance racing and sprint racing, there's certainly a very big difference there in terms of things of strategy and pit stops and things like that. Within the 3-hour race that we had, in SRO, it was always great to help our guys get more reps in and get more pit stops under their belt, because we're not doing pit stops every week. In Pilot Challenge, even for the shorter races, you're still doing pit stops every week. So it's really important for our guys to continue to get pit stop practice in and get those stops in. But there's a completely different rule set between SRO and IMSA, especially as it relates to drive times and driver minimums and fuel capacity. So there's a lot more strategy involved on the IMSA side and how that plays out. So for us, from a preparation standpoint, is making sure that the car is really, really well prepared, that nothing's going to fall off or break, is to the best of our ability. I mean, it's racing, right? Things happen, parts break. We all know that. But making sure that we've done everything that we can influence or control to the best of our ability to make sure that the cars are prepared. And then also making sure that the drivers understand the mission at hand of, hey, in that first stint, you can't have contact. You can't have issues come up. You have to make sure that you give the next driver a car that they can manage and maintain, and you're not burning the brakes off the thing. You're not burning it up. You're saving some of the car for within each stint, to where at the last stint, hopefully you've positioned yourself well, your strategy's played out, that that last hour or so, or that last fuel run, you're able to push 110%. And it gets back to what we do on a almost weekly basis with sprint racing, where from the time you drop the green flag to the end, you're throwing down qualifiers every lap, and it's all you've got. So two very, very different kind of worlds, which it's great to be able to go back and forth between the two, not only for our guys and girls on the team, but also our drivers as well, because you're really having to change that mindset as you go into each race weekend.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just talking about the race itself, a lot of people have been talking about it leading up to the race, and then obviously post race as well. Do you want to see maybe endurance races like these continue in GT4 America? I mean, what did you overall think of just kind of the overall, weekend in that series with that 3-hour race? Because I think coming out of it, I think there was a lot of definitely a lot of excitement for what could come, and maybe some more endurance races in the future in GT4 America.
Absolutely. I think within the GT4 America side, it was great too that they took the risk and they did that. There's several of us in the paddock that have been asking for it. They listened, they put that event together, and it's in an epic venue like COTA. I think it worked great. I think the biggest thing that you have to be mindful of is the cost. We're our own worst enemy. We'd love to add more and more endurance races, but they're very expensive to run. You have more tires, more personnel. The cost increases a lot very quickly. So you have to be very conscious of that. So, one or two additional endurance races in SRO would be, I think it'd be great, because you're invoking more of the team. You're getting more of the team involved instead of it just being, the two drivers for a 1-hour sprint format. But we, from the team side, we love it. It's certainly a lot of fun. It's a new challenge, and it really gives you the opportunity to let things kind of play out. If something doesn't happen in the first hour, or get a penalty, or your car is not really where it needs to be, it gives you a couple more chances to kind of work on it and see what you can make of it. But yeah, I love the endurance races, and I wish we'd have more. And I still think there's the opportunity to create a combined, really marquee GT4 race that's could be separate, not SRO, not IMSA, just a big GT4 race that would be really cool to put on an 8-hour, 10-hour, 12-hour race. It's the largest class in GT racing between IMSA and SRO. You know, you could have 60, 70 cars show up for an endurance race and it would be unbelievable. So, you know, the thing that makes GT4 racing attractive, quite honestly, is the budgets. You know, when you look at GTD and GT3 budgets, the cars, you know, now are approaching $750,000, $850,000 per car. Your budgets are, you know, over $5 million a year to run an IMSA, well over that. So when you start looking at that, it's really, really, really expensive to do. And GT4 racing is still, if there is such thing as affordable racing, is a little bit more affordable when that, you know, you can go run all year in that $750,000 to $1.5 million range for the year. So it's still, you know, I think that's why you're seeing the numbers that you do and the success of it.
What do you think about, I mean, just seeing, you obviously looked at the GT4 America field and you got to race this past weekend, and then just seeing the amount of cars and entries that are in it. You talked about how GT4 cars are probably the most prominent right now in sports car racing in terms of the amount of cars that are out there and racing on track. But I mean, just seeing the fields, whether it's GT4, GT3, whatever, you know, type of series it may be. I mean, just seeing the fields and the amount of growth that is, and to be able to be a part of that and race against really, really good competition, and it continues to step up and continues to evolve. I mean, what is that like being a part of that, and how does that also affect you guys as a team to, you know, kind of continue to improve and you know, maybe learn some things about how this grid is continuing to evolve?
You know, the GT4 series, since we've been a part of it, has grown tremendously. When we first got involved in 2021 with the new GR Supra GT4 car, I had never driven a GT4 car. I jokingly say it was one of the empty buckets on my checklist of things to drive. But I'd never driven a GT4 car, never been involved in GT4 racing till we started Smooge racing with John Jesbray and his dad, and started the Toyota program. And it was so much fun because the racing's really close. The racing is really, really hard, especially up front. I mean, there's a lot of contact, a lot of beating and banging, and you really have to be on it to win these races and to run up front. And, you know, we've been a part of it since 2021 and continue to see it grow. And the drivers that you see, I mean, it's kind of funny, the top 10 in GT4 racing, the same top 10 that you see in other disciplines of sports car racing, whether it's GT3 or even prototype in Europe, Asia, and North America as well. So, you know, for us, we're focused more on the driver development side, working very closely with the Toyota driver development program, the TD2 program. This year in the 68 car, both John Jesbray and Tyler Gonzalez are both Toyota drivers in that development program. So for us, GT4 is really important to help them continue to develop as professional race car drivers to get to that next step. For them, which will be GT3. Isabella Robusto, who raced with me at COTA this past weekend, she's a Toyota development driver. She's a little bit more focused on the stock car path, but it's important for her to get that sports car experience and that road course experience as well, because as you continue to move up in the NASCAR system, you know, there's more and more road courses, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. If anything, I think you're going to see an even bigger shift to, you know, almost a balance of road courses to ovals in the next 3 to 5 years. So they're understanding that drivers that maybe have more of a stock car focus versus a sports car focus still see the value and the benefit there. So when you go to a GT4 race, you have everything from guys like Kay Van Berlo and Kenton Cook to you know, guys like Tyler Gonzalez and John Jesbray that are working their way through the ladder. So there's no shortage of competition in that front half of the field.
It must be pretty nice too to be able, you know, you have such a diverse background in your own right. You've raced in you know, stock car racing. You've now raced in sports car racing. To be able to help some of these, you know, maybe younger Toyota drivers, even if they're in, say, a NASCAR, and be able to maybe give, you know, them pointers and advice and stuff. That must be really cool to be able to kind of help them out in their career as they get going. Because as you kind of mentioned, like, NASCAR is changing with all these road course races happening, and they're evolving as well with their cars and their on track machines that they're bringing out. So, you know, how cool is that to be able to really help the development of some of these younger drivers? That must be really special.
It's been really cool to, you know, starting out. I've done some coaching over the years, and there's a lot of drivers that a big portion of their income is derived from coaching, and I'm not in that bucket, but I've been, fortunate to work with John, and then got, involved back with the Toyota family. I was with Toyota on the NASCAR side back in the day, and now to be back with Toyota is awesome, to be helping out with their driver development program. It's a full circle moment for me, and it's kind of the what's next in my next chapter. I'm not getting any younger, so for me to be able to kind of give some of that information and feedback, and probably more of what not to do than what to do, to some of these kids coming up. And it's like, man, I wish I would have known that, or I wish I would have had that perspective, or somebody would have told me these things when I was in those situations. And you kind of go through the school of hard knocks. So hopefully we can flatten out that learning curve a little bit, and add some value somewhere along the way. And it's been fun. I'm helping out some of the drivers even on the late model side. I mean, tomorrow I'll be at a late model race for the Cars Tour, and then I've been to some ARCA races this year, and sports car races. So really helping some of those drivers understand where they can optimize, where they can maximize, both not only on the racetrack, but what they do outside of the race car as well. So it's been a lot of fun to be able to have a little bit of influence there, and help, and know that I've been in that world of having to make that transition between sports cars and stock cars. And when I went to sports cars, I had never road raced. That wasn't my background or anything. I was a sprint car midget guy and late model guy. And, other than the road courses that we ran in NASCAR, it was truly like, Talladega Nights in reverse. It was like the redneck going to Europe. And I got there, I was like, whoa, I don't know what they're talking about. They definitely don't like me. My suits are boot cut, and these guys all have tapered leg suits. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on, It was definitely a big learning curve, but fortunately we were able to, adapt really quickly, and win a lot of races and win some championships on the sports car side over the years. And it's been a lot of fun, because sports car racing, the driver, you still have to have great equipment. Equipment matters tremendously, but the driver can really kind of shine, where on ovals, sometimes you kind of have what you have equipment wise, and the driver can't have as much influence as they can on road courses, or if it's, the best scenario is road courses in the rain. It's the great equalizer.
Absolutely. What was it like learning this style of racing, sports car racing, transitioning over from NASCAR into sports car racing? What was kind of like that big, kind of learning experience for you? Obviously the controls are different, when in stock car racing, you're dealing with more shifter cars, and while in sports car racing, you have your button pressing, and there's different features now that are offered in some of these cars. I mean, it's just so crazy. It looks like a video game inside some of these cars. So what was kind of that big learning process for you when you first jumped into sports car racing, and how have you grown over these years, especially now becoming a team principal with Smooge? I mean, that definitely has to also beneficiate yourself as well as you continue to go into this second part of your career.
Absolutely. When I first started in sports car racing, I had never even been in a car that had, anti-lock brake systems or ABS or any type of traction control or anything like that. It was how you modulated your feet, how much brake pressure you used, or how hard you pressed on the throttle, and really understanding how to utilize those systems to your advantage. I think in the stock car world, it's changed now drastically, but for a long time, everybody kind of turned their nose up a little bit at the sports car crowd, kind of the wine and cheese guys. And it's kind of like a little bit of an eye roll. I mean, you knew, like in the prototypes and in Indy cars and stuff, that there's some really, really talented race car drivers that are amazing and pretty epic. But sports car racing as a whole, or GT racing, it's kind of viewed as like where the guys that couldn't make it to IndyCar or Formula One went to go have a career, because they couldn't have a career anywhere else. So the first thing when I got over there and first went to Europe to race, it was like, wow, these guys are really good. Almost all of them, at the professional level, are really, really good. And it's not this wine and cheese crowd. So it's a big, I think it's starting to be much more understood, as you're seeing explosive growth in sports car racing. You're seeing more and more people become engaged with it and watch it, both on digital platforms as well as watching it, tuning on TV. But the live streaming, I think, has been a huge advantage for sports car racing, because so many people can tune into that. And I always jokingly say, when I first left the NASCAR world and went to sports cars, so many people said, man, why did you leave the NASCAR world and go to sports cars? And I said, because, no kid ever, dreamed of turning 16 and getting a Toyota Camry. It was, you're racing Lamborghinis. And at the time I was with Lamborghinis. So I was like, we want to race a Lamborghini, or we want to race a Camry or a Mustang, or, at the time an Impala or whatever. You're just kind of like, I'll take the Lambo, please. But It was a big learning curve as far as understanding the systems, how to use those cars, understanding how those guys raced. I think I brought some things to the table, especially on starts and restarts, where we were much stronger than some of the guys there, just because of the NASCAR world. Like that's, you really have to make it work on your starts and restarts. So that was a lot of fun. Those were some of the strengths I think that we had in racing hard, not being afraid to get in there and put your elbows out and move people around as needed. I think that was definitely a strong suit, but understanding the technicality of road racing was definitely something that I had to learn and adapt to and dial back the aggression a little bit. And yet at the end of the day, you have to keep in mind, on the GT4 side, you're racing $300,000 cars. On the GT3 side, you're racing, now almost $1 million cars. So, when you move somebody out of the way or you're knocking nose off or something, you're $15,000, $20,000, $30,000, so it's not like in the stock car world where you can have a little bit more leniency on the contact.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I want to ask you this. You kind of talked about the transition, and then, you look at a guy like Michael McDowell. I got a chance to talk to Michael earlier this year in February, and you race for Front Row Motorsports as well. So this is kind of fitting, although he is leaving to go to Spire here in a next season. So, just kind of talking a little bit about, like someone like a Michael McDowell who transitioned into NASCAR from sports car racing. I mean, what is that transition like, do you feel like, for some of these newer people now? You see guys like a Jordan Taylor who went from sports car racing, jumped into NASCAR racing. I mean, that's got to be an interesting transition as well. And to see somebody like Michael McDowell, who had so much success on sports car racing and then now has succeeded in NASCAR, especially with the team that you are familiar with in Front Row Motorsports, it's got to be pretty cool to see like how these NASCAR teams are adapting now to this style of racing, and road course racing especially has really become a part of NASCAR and honestly the culture of it.
Absolutely. And, Michael's a great example. Michael came over on the NASCAR side when there are far fewer similarities, fewer road courses, and the cars were just so drastically different that he really had to adapt to an entirely different style of racing. And he was always good on the road courses, but he had to pick up on the ovals and learn that really quickly and kind of go through. And I think we've seen Michael have a lot of success with the next gen car, both as Front Row Motorsports has grown tremendously as a team. I mean, there were times where, sticker tires, you'd ask for about new tires or sticker tires, and everybody at Front Row would look at your side and be like, never heard of them. Because they just didn't have the budget. And now Front Row Motorsports has turned into, a winning team that's making the playoffs. And it's been incredible to see what Bob Jenkins and Jerry Freese have been able to build over, the long term with that program. And Michael's been able to be a big part of that. But I think the next gen car really played into Michael's strong suits for sure. And there's never been a closer alignment between the sports car world and the NASCAR world, especially on the Cup side. The trucks are their own beast. There's nothing else like them. There's nothing else that drives like them. A lot of side force, not a lot of horsepower, a lot of grip. You can just kind of hang those things out, and they're amazing to drive. So much fun to drive, but they're kind of their own beast. And you have the Xfinity cars now that on many tracks are faster than the Cup cars. And way less grip, less downforce. You still have solid axle, rear suspension, truck arm, kind of old school. And a lot of guys still love driving those cars because it's so different than the next gen car. But I think you're seeing guys like SVG come over and have success because of the similarity in the cars. I think when we saw at Chicago last year, it was pretty awesome with SVG. I think a big part of that was street circuit, walls, all those things played into his favor in a really big way. But that he's learning, and the ovals are their entire beast. I remember back around 2009, Kimi Räikkönen came over to try doing I think he did an Xfinity race and truck race at Charlotte, and we were there, and when he was testing, and he was struggling big time to try to figure out that transition. You've seen guys like Jacques Villeneuve, you've seen Juan Pablo Montoya, Patrick Compartier, you see a bunch of guys come over and try to make that transition. And Juan's an incredible race car driver, probably one of the best race car drivers in the world, but never really had very much success on the ovals outside of road courses. So it's an entirely different discipline. It's tough. It's very unique. It's all to its own. And I think that there's only a handful of guys that would be able to make that transition back and forth. And right now, currently today, I think Kyle Larson's probably the best at doing that. When you look at, people forget he's won a Rolex 24, he's a Cup champion. You go through these things that he's done. And I think he's probably one of the most versatile guys in the paddock. And it was, the pioneers, like Michael was certainly a pioneer for sure, not being a single seater guy per se. Ran a lot of single seaters, but coming out of prototypes and making that transition, he's been the journeyman that's made it.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that Kyle Larson, like just talk about this weekend, obviously that's a pretty big deal, right? Like Larson's running
Huge.
double and it's really exciting. I mean, it hasn't happened since 2014 when Kurt Busch did it. I mean,
Mhm.
do you think that Kyle Larson, this is kind of and I think he's really setting the standard for maybe the future of what racing is looking like, where you really do have to be diverse and have a multitude of different backgrounds to be able to race in what is kind of a new era right now we're going in for racing. But do you think that Kyle Larson running this weekend, do you think that may be something where this kind of might be a trickle effect where we might see more guys running the double or running other forms of racing? Do you think that that's the case? I know it's happened for years, but especially in IndyCar and NASCAR, I feel like it hasn't happened in 10 years. So do you think this could be maybe the trickle down effect for the future? Maybe of IndyCar, NASCAR doubles we'll see more often than not?
I think the theory of it, yes. The reality of it, no, because there's so few drivers that can actually do it and do it as
Mhm.
well as the racing has changed so much. When you see the era of, I call it kind of the Mario Andretti, AJ Foyt era of those guys racing anything, everything, and winning, not just racing. So I think that you might see some guys show up and do it, but guys that are able to be with the right, racing has become so specialized to be able to put together a program where you can be with a winning team, do what it takes to be able to go and be competitive on both sides, on the stock car side, on the NASCAR side, and on the IndyCar side. It's just a massive, massive effort to be able to do that and go win. To be able to do it and go run it and just go ride around in circles, sure, you could go do that. But to be able to go do it competitively is a massive, massive undertaking. And my opinion is there's only a small handful of guys that could even do that and be competitive at it. From that standpoint, I mean, we've seen Jimmy Johnson, who's an absolute beast of a race car driver, one of the greatest of all time, and he never really found his feet on the IndyCar side, and he was with a good team, and he it wasn't from lack of effort on his side. It's not because he doesn't know how to drive a race car, because he's not a good race car driver. So I think that it comes back. There's that right now everything's become so specialized. And there's so much effort with what it takes to be a race car driver now, and the level of focus and input and everything's become so competitive that I think what we're going to witness this weekend, hopefully, Kyle can get through the 500 and not have any big issues or anything. He can absolutely win the 500. He can fly down and win the 600. He's got great teams and he's put the effort in, and he's probably by far one of the most versatile drivers. I think it is cool, though. What we are seeing is more and more drivers coming back to the short tracks. And you're seeing that even, I've been going to a lot of late model races this year to help out some of the Toyota drivers. And that's one of the things we see is you'll continually see at least one or two or three Cup guys or Xfinity guys or truck guys showing up these late model races. And that used to be commonplace. All those guys used to do it all the time. And I think you are seeing drivers run more often and run in other disciplines. So I think that'll be good. But man, to go after those crown jewel races, it's just it's tough. I do think because of the next gen car, we've seen way more interest in sports car racing from some of the NASCAR guys. So when you look at a race like the Daytona 24 that's in January, they're not racing. It's there's not a lot of logistical hurdles to overcome. I do think you'll see guys in the Rolex 24, and certainly I don't think there's a race, anybody that's raced at a professional level or at a high level that wouldn't want to do Le Mans if the opportunity presented itself. So I think you'll see more and more of those types of things happen. But I think we're witnessing something pretty special with somebody like Kyle Larson, with Arrow McLaren, with Hendrick Motorsports. It's a pretty powerful combination.
You talked about competing in these crown jewel events. I know you didn't qualify for the Daytona 500, but you did attempt to qualify with Nimco Motorsports back in 2011. Can you just talk about what it's like trying to go after some of those crown jewel events? I mean, especially the Daytona 500, where you're definitely going to have more cars enter than what is going to be allowed actually on race day. I definitely can imagine that's got to be a difficult process to maneuver through, especially when you obviously don't make it as well. That's definitely got to be tough to obviously a tough pill to swallow, but also it's definitely got to be neat to still experience that process and what it's like getting up to that point as well.
Absolutely. And yeah, the Daytona 500, that one still stings. That was one of the things that unfortunately, it comes back to budget, team, opportunity, and all those things, and we didn't go fast enough in single car qualifying to lock ourselves in. So we had to race our way in. And I remember that, really well. Unfortunately, it's a core memory seared in the brain there that, we were locked in for the entire 150 until we had a green white checker there at the end, and we had to restart and got shuffled back. But there's so much emotion that goes into that, and then we've seen NASCAR ebb and flow over the years. We have crazy huge car counts, and it's really, really competitive and tough to get in. And then you have years where one car goes home, two cars go home, or even like for the Coke 600 this weekend, I don't think anybody's going home. I think it's 36 cars for 36 spots, something like that. So we've seen that even in the Xfinity series. A lot of times back when I was in the Xfinity series, there's 55, 60 cars showing up sometimes for these races. And now, there's oftentimes not really 36. So, when you're getting ready to go into one of those major events like the Daytona 500, you have to have everything has to be perfect in order to make it. We did it with a much lower budget program with Joe, and everybody worked their tails off and put their best foot forward. And, I can go back and replay. There's a million things that we could have, should have, would have done differently to make sure that we were in the show. And quite candidly, experience got the better of me, and got side drafted and sucked back, and was just like, wow, noted. That's not going to happen again. But when you miss a race like that, it sucks. When you miss any race, I don't care if you miss a late model race, if you miss a sports car race, if you miss anything, it sucks. But when you miss the Daytona 500, it's you never get over it. You never forget it anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how does that mentally prepare you for like races that you now compete in, or even like in years prior? I mean, like, being able to go up against some of the best drivers and even teams who may only come out for that one race. I mean, to be able to, as I mentioned, kind of go through that process and compete against maybe some of the top teams in NASCAR. And I know you've competed against them a lot over the years, but obviously in the Daytona 500, it's a special race, and teams always, I feel like, amp themselves up a little bit. How does that mentally prepare you for like other races down the road in your career? Just kind of being a part of that a little bit.
Yeah, I think you have to take it all and look at it as, yes, it is a big race, but you can't prepare for that race any differently than you do any other one. You have to just make sure that you're, absolutely optimizing every single thing that you can influence and that you can touch. And we can control more than what we think we can control. A lot of people say, well, that's out of our control. And when you really dive in, it's like, is it really? So, you have to really optimize every single area, and every person has to do the best that they can across the board. And, even then sometimes your best isn't good enough, and that's what really stings. But I think it's important to understand, to use those moments to learn from and to grow from, and to, just like we were saying earlier, if the team's not performing at the level that it's expected to perform and that it should perform, you really have to dive in and understand why. And you have to check your ego at the door and understand what's really going on, and what happened, and correct that problem and move forward and learn and grow. So I think from the mindset, I think maybe it just helps you manage your emotions a little bit more, keep things in check, of understanding that, you're not defined by this moment. This moment doesn't define you, but this moment's really important. And we have to optimize, make sure that we put our best foot forward. And it's crazy, when you're really prepared and you really go after it, and it's cool what can happen when you really optimize all of those things. And sometimes it doesn't work, but more times than not, it does. And now there's so many tools for teams to utilize with simulators, sim training, going back from video stuff and SMT data. There's just a tremendous amount of information that wasn't previously available. And when I look at the next generation of drivers coming up, and all the information and all the tools that they have at their disposal, two things. You have to it takes so much more time and effort and work to prepare to be good and to really understand how to utilize those tools. But there's so much more information that they have available to them. It makes it that much more competitive, because the ones that are willing to lay it all on the line, and I don't mean from a bravery or courage standpoint, but from a standpoint of, 24/7, this is my life. This is eat, drink, breathe, sleep. Like, I am going to optimize everything from why I go to bed at 9 a.m., why I wake up at 5:30 a.m., how I train, how I prepare, how I utilize this data, how I utilize all these resources. It's pretty interesting to see, this next generation, and it's massively different than what it was even 5 years ago.
Yeah, I was going to say, how has the preparation changed over the years that you've been racing? I mean, you've seen it, the amount of tools that are open to drivers is different. The technology that is open to drivers is different. The training mechanisms, like drivers have their own ways of training. It's completely changed, and each driver has their own way of attacking each race weekend. I mean, what has it been like to see that, kind of evolution of the training and the development and the just kind of that preparation for some of these drivers as they go through their career, and especially as they're, going into that kind of this new, age of technology that we have now and it's offered.
Yeah, it makes me realize how much I didn't optimize. Going back to that, what I was just saying earlier about so many things we could have optimized or that you have to optimize and do. I look back and go, man, I left a lot on the table. And when you look at from the physical fitness and preparation side, not just being fit and working out, but how you work out and what that looks like. And now, there's such a better understanding of what type of conditioning drivers need to have. They don't need to just be fit. It needs to be a very specific type of conditioning, very specific type of preparation from that standpoint. And everybody's a little bit different. So tailoring that to them. So, there's the physical side, but to your point on the tools that they have, both from, now you can look at everybody's SMT data. I mean, you get throttle, steering, brake, like you see what they're doing. Even when I was at Joe Gibbs Racing and, I was teammates with Denny, and Denny was always really good at Dover in the Xfinity car. And he'd go out and just lay down a flyer. And you're like, man, you go over and talk to Denny and he's like, dude, I don't even know what I'm doing. I just kind of drive, and that was your baseline. Like, all right, well, I guess we'll figure it out. And now you can go back and see the line that they're running. You can see that they have, most of the larger teams have war rooms back at the shop where they're analyzing all that data, and the shop engineers are then relaying that information back to the team. Even setup changes, they're able to run that through simulation back at the shop and understand what it's going to do before they even tell the crew chief to make that change in between practices and things. So before, your entire data acquisition telemetry system was your seat of the pants, right? That was your butt, your hands, your feet. That was your data acquisition system. And now we have so much more technology there. Even things it's starting at a very early, low level, like iRacing, that was crazy. I mean, we had NASCAR 2003 was as good as it got. And so, having those tools to just go learn a racetrack and to figure out things that you can learn from iRacing, let alone the OEMs all have their sims that they use. They're big, huge, high dollar sims that are very different than iRacing. Now you're seeing, tens to 20s of hours, 10, 20 hours at least per race, per driver, that they're going in, just running through different scenarios, running through different setups on those sims before they get to the racetrack. Because practice is so limited now. You practice, you qualify. Like if you unload and you're off, you're in for a bad weekend for the most part. So, now what they're able to do with that data going back, and when you watch a race now they're able to take and watch that race on one screen and overlay the SMT data on the other screen. So not only are you watching that race, but you see what the driver's doing with their hands and their feet in every moment. So you can back it up and be like, why did they put the car here? How did they set this pass up here when they knew the car was tight in this way? What did they do to adjust for that with their hands and their feet to see that? So those are things you could never see before. So now it just requires more time, more effort, and making sure that you're optimizing every one of those tools available to you. The rock star race car driver days, those are over, man. Like it takes a lot to be the best in this sport, and at any level. I'm talking from sports cars, Indy cars, F1, stock cars. I think that it's widely misunderstood the amount of effort that drivers put in, and our season's very long and it pretty much goes year round. And that's when you look at the greats in stick and ball sports of a Kobe Bryant or any of those guys, they never took an off season. They trained harder through their off season than they ever did in season, where you see a lot of guys be like, I need a vacation. It's the off season. I'm gonna take it down. And you see the same thing in racing. You see the ones that that just never stop versus the ones that are like, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to do this. It's just, it's becoming incredibly noticeable. And I think it's very misunderstood of how much effort it takes to be great.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not even what's going on the track. Sometimes it's what's going off the track and all the development. I mean, it is really interesting to see, like sometimes people may not understand, like, there's so much actually going on inside the the garage or at the facility, and learning about the car and any ways to improve it, or learning about, it is interesting to see just kind of like they're, even on the weeks that you guys are off, it's still constantly continuing to learn and develop. It's impressive.
You might get a weekend to sneak away to the beach or something just to turn your brain off for to just kind of mentally reboot, which is important too. But racing's never not on your mind, and because of those things that we just talked about and all those tools and that preparation, that's why when you see things like the Memorial Day double that Kyle's doing and things, why it's going to become increasingly more difficult for drivers to find success in those types of opportunities.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree. Let me ask you this. You're at this stage of your career, you're in sports car racing, you're kind of, I wouldn't say you haven't taken a step back, but you've definitely, you've decreased some of your racing stuff. But like, would you still be interested in racing in NASCAR, like doing one-off races, or maybe do like a Daytona 500 run? I know Toyota, it's tough with not as many teams with Toyota and such, but like, I know you have Bubba as a teammate this year. 2311's got an extra open car. Like, would you ever consider going back into NASCAR, maybe trying to do maybe some of these crown jewel events?
Man, I would love to. The Daytona 500 deal still haunts me, and so yeah, absolutely, I would do it in a heartbeat. And I've had some opportunities over the years to go back and do some races, and it wasn't with the right team, and I just didn't really want to go back and start and park or go run in the back or go struggle through with one of the teams. And that's one of the things I respect a lot about Michael McDowell's, dude starting parked for years without running a whole season and then turned it around. And it's kind of cool. In the second half of his career, he's really thriving, and it wasn't the first half. It was the second half to see what he's been able to do and, winning the Daytona 500 and things like that. But it's just really, really cool. But I would love to go back. I mean, even if it's a truck or Xfinity car, I still love it. That's still my roots. Not sure if that would happen, but if the opportunity presented itself, I would absolutely do it in a heartbeat. And we always ran really well on super speedways, and even some of the intermediates and road courses were some of my best races. So would certainly love to go back and have another shot at it for sure. And man, there's so many things that you learn and that now that's like, God, I wish I knew that then, or I wish I would have thought through that then. So certainly have learned and grown tremendously as a driver. But I would love to go back. I don't know if that opportunity is, I would say it's highly unlikely, but should the right opportunity arise, I certainly would jump at that chance.
What is it like handling a sports car on the high banks of Daytona compared to like handling like a stock car on the high banks? Like, I can imagine it's gotta be interesting in such handling.
Yeah, it's you're way below the grip level of the tire, so it's easy. I mean, it's just, you always want more power, you always want more speed in the sports car side, so you're always fighting that. But one of the advantages that you've had over the years, especially at Daytona, of all the sports car races and stuff that we've run there, is being able to side draft and understand the air a little bit better than a lot of the guys. But I'll tell you, back to what we're saying on the preparation, all the sports car guys have started to understand Daytona more and more, and the effort that they put into the whole, the 24 week down there, whether it's Pilot Challenge or WeatherTech or whatever series it is. The amount of preparation those guys have put into learning the air, understanding it, and understanding where they can exploit opportunities. It's few and far between when you can find somebody that doesn't know how to properly side draft. Or it's usually the guys that it's their first time and they're like, oh, they'll get caught out or something like that. But sports cars at Daytona are a lot of fun, and it's just a cool place. Every time you go through the tunnel, you get goosebumps, and you're just like, man, this is Daytona. And no matter what you're driving to get to victory lane at Daytona is extremely special. If it's a 4-hour race, 24-hour race, or whatever it is.
Yeah, going through the tunnel and then just seeing how massive the track is and like experiencing it, especially coming just from a media side of things. It's from a media perspective, it's even still crazy. Like and then seeing the crowd levels too are insane too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And last year, or the last few years, I've been fortunate to be able to win at Indy, and we won at COTA and won at COTA last year, won at Indy last year, won there a few times in different series. And any of those racetracks that kind of, I'll call them the prestige tracks, it's always really, really cool and special for me. And, we've won several races at Watkins Glen, which is always cool because it's a place I went to on the NASCAR side, and to go back and win there in sports cars is something that's a little bit more sentimental and special for me, for sure.
You talked about your kind of guest car you had this year back at Daytona. It kind of interesting. It kind of comes full circle. You had John Hunter Nemechek in the car, and obviously his dad is Joe, and you got to race for Joe's team back in, like 2011 for NASCAR. So you've obviously had a lot of experience with his father. But I mean, like how beneficial was it to have guys like that who are so, they've obviously had so much success already in their NASCAR careers, and then to be able to bring them over into sports car racing and to probably see their expressions and their face and when they got to be able to be behind the wheel of that car. I mean, how cool was it to see them kind of glued to that form of racing, and what was it like being able to kind of work with Bubba and John Hunter and even also Corey Heim as well? It must have been a pretty fun experience from a Toyota team as well.
Yeah, it was a really, really cool experience just to expose those guys to the sports car world and the braking of sports cars, how impressive the braking is in the GR Supra. Mm-hmm. That thing stops really well. It's probably one of its strong suits, and that car is a lot of fun to drive. And just the sports car racing side, it's so different, but there's some things that overlap. But it was cool to be able to have those guys. And I've known John Hunter basically his entire life. I mean, I've kind of grown up around him, even when my family was involved in NASCAR, through the 90s and all that stuff. So I've known John Hunter literally his whole life and watched him grow up and watched him race, go-karts and legacy cars and late models, and have certainly followed his career. So there was a moment that was really cool to have John Hunter with us. Also made me feel really old, but John Hunter is a great race car driver and an even better human being. So having John was a lot of fun, and Bubba adapted really well. Bubba was pretty hard on himself on road courses. He's kind of been a little up and down on the Cup side on road courses, but he adapted really well, and he did great. And Corey Heim was awesome. Corey was a rock star. He was fast. He adapted very, very quickly, and you understand why all three of those guys are where they are, and they're really, really good professional race car drivers. And it was cool to see how quickly Bubba adapted to an entirely new car, new style of racing without testing, showing up, getting after it. We had the roar for a couple of days, but still, when you have three drivers in one car, you don't get a lot of seat time. So you quickly understand why those guys are at the tip of the spear in racing. And that's one of the things that I think so many fans don't understand is when you watch a Cup race, out of those 36 guys, you've got at least 32, 33, 34 of them that are any of one of them can win given the right equipment and the right scenario that some of the other ones are in. We saw that in the first year of the next gen car. You had tons of new teams winning, you had new drivers winning, but at the end of the day, as you're seeing now, the cream is still going to rise to the top, and the teams with the best resources and the best utilization of those resources are going to win. It's what you're seeing with JGR and Hendrick, and you'll see it as Penske continues to turn things around, and the biggest resources win, man. It's been that way for forever.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's the way racing is. It feels like a lot of the funded teams, that's why you always see their performance is always at the highest level. And you got to compete with one of them in NASCAR with Joe Gibbs Racing. Is there, in your NASCAR career, is there a certain team that you look back on as kind of like a team that really kind of gave you a lot of like information, or was kind of like a really helpful like boost for your career at all? Like, was there that NASCAR team that really you can kind of point back and like they really helped me kind of kind of evolve my career, if you will?
Yeah. No, I have a lot of takeaways, I think, from every team I drove for. I had the opportunity to drive for super scrappy mom and pop teams to Joe Gibbs Racing to, even what most people didn't realize is the whole Joe Nemechek deal was basically a Red Bull program. So that was basically just a full satellite Red Bull. There was a lot more there than what was known, I guess, to the general public, so to speak. But there was a lot going on there. But, I think that you learn from every one of those teams. And that's one of the things that certainly helped me as a team principal to build and forge a team with Smooge Racing to be the team that I always wanted to drive for. Yeah. The team that I want our engineers and our employees and our drivers to be like, that's where I want to be, because they give us the opportunities, the resources, the information, the things that we need. And they take care of us and invest in us. And, certainly learned from a lot of those teams, but the ones that really stick out, when I drove for Ernie Irvan in the ARCA series, it was an amazing time. Most of the time it was literally Ernie and I working on the car and all volunteer help. And we legitimately did it out of Ernie's barn. Literally out of his barn. And we had so much fun, and I learned so much from Ernie Irvan. Like it probably more from, this couple years there with Ernie than I did at any other point in my career. He was harsh, man. He was rough. But brutal honesty, and that guy, he's a legend, and he certainly helped me tremendously. And, a team that we never really had, we didn't have the time to kind of have a lot of success together, but probably one of the more fun times, and the guys I enjoyed working with the most was there's a small team I drove only a handful of races for in 2009 called R3 Motorsports, and Jefferson Hodges was a crew chief. Jefferson's now the general manager of Penske. And Mark McFarland, who Mark was an awesome late model racer and won a lot of races and championships. And Mark was running JGR's ARCA program up until last year. But Mark was our car chief, and Jefferson was a crew chief. And it was just a fun bunch of, racers getting together to go race. And we certainly punched above our weight with that program. But, that one was a lot of fun. And certainly, the systems and the processes and the things you learn from an organization like Joe Gibbs Racing is something you never forget.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me ask you this. Do you guys hire on Bubba after the Rolex weekend as your team photographer? I saw he was taking photos at the Rolex 24 when we were out and about, and my buddy actually had pointed that out. But did you guys bring in Bubba as team photographer after the weekend?
Yeah, that was, it's always cool to see. Bubba loves his photography as his passion. And I always kind of laugh. I was like, it's like photography, drumming, and bourbon are kind of his three things outside of the race car. And it's cool. Bubba's actually a pretty darn good photographer, So I've got a really, really close friend of mine is Jamie Price, who's a photographer in multiple disciplines of racing. He does some NASCAR stuff, but primarily sports cars and Formula One. And he and Jamie connected and online and some different things. So it's fun to see Bubba really, it just like he does in anything, puts forth the effort to become really good at it. And he doesn't want to just do it. He wants to be good at it. So his photography is he's taking some really good photos. Like it's cool anytime that you can help support somebody's passion and hope, he had some fun being able to just go be a civilian, kind of be a fan and have fun, walk around and take pictures and not, have people coming up and asking questions or things for an autograph all the time. I got to just go take pictures and enjoy the Rolex.
Kevin, what do you enjoy doing outside of the track? Obviously, every driver has some free time, and I know with you being a team principal, there's obviously a lot more expectations, and a lot more roles, and maybe different hats that you wear. But I mean, what are some things that you enjoy doing outside of the track?
Yeah, in the winter, I love to go snowboarding and really love to get out and get on the mountain as much as I can there. And then anything that has to do with the water in the summer, although my days and availability to do that are fewer and far between. And I have my company Fuzi that, I started a few years back, almost 7 years ago now. And that company's doing extremely well. Shark Tank kind of blew us up on that one once we did the Shark Tank thing. And that company's doing really, really well. So the consumer side has been fun. So, learning to create an entire consumer category, learning to create a brand from scratch and having it succeed. And the successes that we've had has been a lot of fun. And it certainly only helps us on the racing side to understand better and deeper from, the purview of our marketing partners and the things that they're going through and some of the challenges that they're fighting, and gives us a better insight on how to best bridge those gaps and address those challenges and needs through motorsports in ways that other marketing channels can't. So, between Fuzi and my other hobbies that I love to do but don't have time to do, it's there's no time off.
I can imagine, man. It's you're a busy guy. You're out there getting work done. So I like it. Kind of talking a little bit. I want to go back to last year. You got to race in the prototype class in LMP3, which no longer is at the top class of IMSA, but now is raced in the VP Racing Fuel Sports Car Challenge. But you get to race for AVE Motorsports last season. So, and that was at IMS. So, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that was your first time racing in the top series in the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
What was that like, racing with them and kind of a one-off appearance there at IMS, and then just kind of learning about the prototype style of racing too? I mean, that's a kind of a different world. I mean, the downforce is a little bit different as well in those cars. I mean, that's definitely got to be a different experience for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ave helps us operate the Smooge Racing on the competition side. So it was kind of a natural fit right there with those guys. And we wanted to get John Jesbray some more experience in a downforce car with more downforce. So we said, hey, the P3 is kind of a natural fit for him. So let's put this together to run with him to help him get more experience there. And it was something that I jumped at the opportunity to do. I was like, heck yeah, I'll do it, in a heartbeat. So to run those cars, it was a really, really cool experience. Those cars are awesome. It's tough to hop into the WeatherTech category, and especially in that class. I've never driven that car, or really gone and done any testing or anything, to just hop in and go race. But Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We had a couple penalties that set us back that prevented a good finish there, but it was a lot of fun nonetheless. And those cars they're really, really, really cool cars. They're a lot of fun. And that was the main goal of that program, was to get John more experience in that downforce car and to introduce him to multi-class racing, to get him around the GTP cars and the P2 cars, and then also having to overtake GT3 cars. So that it was mission accomplished in that till we set out to do there. But it was really cool experience, and I love those cars. I wish they were still in WeatherTech for sure, but I understand. I mean, they're so close to the P2 car in terms of pace and cost that it made a lot of sense for IMSA to kind of simplify and streamline things, and made it hopefully a better fan experience, because we hear it all the time when fans would tune in and they're like, dude, I don't know what class is what. I don't even know what to watch. Like, what's going on? So it's hopefully a better experience for the fans. But the LMP3 cars sound great. They look good. They're fun to drive. It's a really cool class.
You ever thought about maybe doing the historic sports car racing? I know they brought in the prototype challenge now with the LMP3 class. I think it's pretty cool. Like, HSR is really, really evolving, and I love seeing all the classic cars as well on display. You ever thought about doing that, trying to get into an LMP3 car again? Would you ever consider doing it again?
Yeah, I absolutely would. I mean, it comes just back to time for me, what we have availability to do. And I'm not quite old enough for HSR yet, but I would definitely do the P3 class. I would definitely go have some fun in. But it's right now it just kind of comes back to hours in the day and time. If it's the right opportunity, I'm always open to it. But it definitely has to be a really good opportunity to set aside other things to go do that.
When we talk about Smooge's, future in racing, I think you guys are a very exciting team. I mean, a few years ago in the GT4 America series in 2021, you guys won 9 races that year. You guys were one of the most dominant teams on the grid, and you guys have continued to evolve and develop as time has gone on. I mean, what do you think the future has for the team going forward? I mean, do you see you guys maybe moving up into the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship? We did see a few teams kind of shuffle some things around. I mean, Flying Lizard made a debut this year at Long Beach. So where does kind of that future look like with Smooge and obviously with Toyota as well? I think their racing developments are continuing to get better as they continue to grow, and obviously their involvement in WEC, but also in IMSA as well. I think it's an exciting time to be involved not only with your team, Smooge, but also with IMSA with Toyota, as well.
Absolutely. So, we love the Toyota family, and their values kind of aligned with what we are creating with Smooge Racing, with the Jesbrays and myself, of saying, hey, this is what we want to do. And that aligned there. So it was a great partner for us. And also their approach to how they develop drivers and how they go racing is aligned to what we want to do. So, first and foremost, we're focused on developing drivers on the GR Cup side and also the GT4 side to bring those drivers through to ultimately GT3. So from a team standpoint, our goal is absolutely to be in the WeatherTech series and SRO as well with GT3. We don't have a car to compete in GT3 with Toyota and Lexus. The program that you're seeing in WeatherTech and WEC, those are all more works programs. So hopefully that'll change soon. There's definitely some things on the horizon, and ultimately our goal is to take an all-American squad for Toyota North America to Le Mans. Certainly our goal, and also to continue to grow and evolve and bring drivers through our program that we can say they started in GR Cup or started GT4 that are now with us in WeatherTech or with us in SRO GT3. So that's certainly our goal, is to over the years continue to grow with Toyota and be a team where people are really excited to work there, to be a part of it, and the drivers are like, man, I'm a part of Smooge, and I had the opportunity to drive there, continue to drive there, and we want to become a destination that people really want to be a part of. And as we continue to kind of roll out this team in phases, you'll see a large fan engagement side too, because we want to bring the fans kind of inside of the team so that they can see and understand the world of sports car racing, because it's so much more than just multi-classes and multi-disciplines. And I think there's just, some really interesting stuff going on that I think people would find compelling. So, we're working on some cool platforms that will enable us to kind of allow that that access, at least digitally, inside of our team more. So, a lot of cool things coming. Like I said, this is the opportunity for me to work with Toyota and build the team that I always wished I could have drove for. And so the guys that have driven for us, that's one of the things they've all taken away. It's like, man, this is awesome. We hear it a lot. Like, this is the best team I've driven for, and that's what we want. I mean, most importantly, we want results, but we also want to have a positive impact on the lives of everybody that's a part of Smooge, and invest in them and make sure that if they move on or they're not a part of us anymore, they look back and say that's the team. So.
And it must be pretty cool to see too. You kind of talked about the brand. I mean, it's so cool to see, and I think sports car racing, especially, how, and even in racing in general, I mean, drivers, teams, their brands are constantly, kind of evolving and catering to this kind of younger generation. And I think it's awesome to see how it's really impacting a lot of people. I mean, you see a team like AO Racing with all their Rexy and Spike liveries that they're running, and other teams that are running kind of neat liveries, or a driver like Jordan Taylor I mentioned earlier, who's got the Rodney Sandstorm gimmick and has kind of made his brand. Like, I think it's cool that sports car racing is almost becoming like major for pro sports, where you see guys have their own brand, you see teams have a brand. I think that's really awesome to see, especially for the future of racing, and especially sports car racing as it continues to evolve and grow in an audience.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I think it's cool that, we have all these crazy social platforms now between TikTok and Instagram and Threads and X, and you go down through and we laugh and we're like, oh yeah, Facebook forgot to update that. That's for our parents. And we always kind of laugh on that side. But it is cool to see, to give fans. I mean, fans have never ever had more accessibility than what they have now, to be able to just hit a driver up or respond in comments or whatever it may be, to ask questions or to see. I mean, we get hit up all the time through our social channels for people asking about jobs or asking, how do I get involved in racing and things like that. And we always want to make sure we try to make the time to respond to them and engage and interact. And it's it's kind of cool to see what this technology has created and how people are leveraging it. I think that it's just barely beginning on what's going to actually happen, and how we're going to be able to integrate that fan experience into more than just the live races themselves. If people want to get more ingrained during the week, I think you're going to see things like that happen. I think you're going to see more involvement and understanding of the technology that's happening within the race, kind of the chess match within the chess match, so to speak.
Absolutely. I completely agree. What's next for you, Kevin? Obviously, you kind of mentioned, you're busy with your own personal business, and then obviously with Smooge and everything that's coming up for you. But what's obviously next for you? What are you looking forward to? Obviously, you got some big races coming up. I imagine you're pretty excited to be able to attack those, not only from a driver but also from a team principal point of view as well. So what's next for you coming up here in 2024? It should be a fun, exciting year as we close the rest of the season going forward.
It really is. We're excited to both have John and Tyler in the Gear Wrench Super this year. Having them hopefully contend for a championship. We've had a rough couple weeks that have dug us a deep hole, but I know we've got the second half of the season to pull ourselves out of that and to turn things around a little bit. But right now we're focused on making sure that those guys are winning races and giving them the resources and tools and the race cars that they need to go do that. So right now our sole focus is on making sure those guys can go out and get the job done and win races and continue to develop as race car drivers. And we're adding, you'll see some surprise driver lineups in the GR Cup Series as well as the GT4 side. So it's a lot of fun from that. And, I'm technically an FIA bronze now. So I'm excited to be able to utilize that amateur ranking to be able to go run some more races and have some fun with that as a bronze. But, right now our focus really is making sure the 68 car can compete for a championship, compete for wins week in, week out. And we're going to have some fun new surprise driver lineups throughout the year for the rest of the year. That will be a lot of fun as we introduce new people to sports car racing and just continue to build this program as we look forward towards GT3 when that car is ready.
Awesome. Well, I'm definitely excited to see what those driver lineups are going to be. I'll definitely keep up with it, and you guys can keep up with it here on Auto Racing Digest. Kevin, plug anything you want. Plug your socials, plug the team socials. Where can they find Smooge and also yourself on all social media platforms?
Yeah, absolutely. Follow along and engage with us. You can follow Smooge Racing at Smooge Racing. It's SMOOGE Racing.com. You can follow along there primarily on Instagram. That's our most active channel is Smooge Racing. You can follow along for all of my socials on X, on Instagram, everywhere at the Kevin Conway. You can feel free to hit us up with questions and anything that you may have there, but you can see all the information there, and it's always fun to engage and interact with our sponsors as well, within Toyota Racing, Gear Wrench, AMCI Global, Fuzi, and all of the our drivers as well. So we have a fun cast of characters, so to speak, and some really good race car drivers that over the next 3 to 5 years, it's going to be a lot of fun to see where their careers take them.
I love it. Kevin, thanks so much for taking some time today. Really happy to get to talk to you. Excited to see what's to come from you and your team. And good luck here upcoming at Mid-Ohio and then also at VIR as well for the GT4 America races coming up.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it.